Che and welcome to the Smiley studio. We're here to announce our amazing partnership with Crowdfunder, which is all about funding positivity. So I want to let our guest introduce himself. Can you introduce yourself, what you do and what's Crowdfunder?
Hi, I'm Simon Deverell. I am founder and co-CEO of Crowdfunder.
What's some of the most famous campaigns that have come out of Crowdfunder?
Well, I suppose we've done a lot of big activism campaigns. So we've worked with the likes of Led by Donkeys, who are a huge, well, they weren't when they started, they were a tiny little group of disgruntled, I think they refer themselves as four men with a ladder, who would go out and put posters up, political posters up over, billboard spaces. They came to Crowdfunder and they grew and grew and grew and grew. So I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're one of the biggest, probably one of the biggest now campaigning bodies in the UK, and they raised multiple millions with us.
What's like a campaign that our audience will be familiar with?
Well, I suppose some of our larger projects that I think we get a lot of fame for are sort of these big, high-profile prize draws where Glastonbury sends their database to our site, so they raise funds for their core charities, and we've done those where you get 60,000 people within 24 hours raise £1 million for a chance to get into Glastonbury, but also for a chance to win an amazing, to support an amazing project.
So it seems like people are very driven towards this idea of like helping their community. Why do you think this is such like a powerful way of raising funds, but also like being a voice for the community?
I suppose we see ourselves as being almost like an emergency service in the community. So we are probably the largest crowdfunding platform in the UK. We get about 200 to 300 projects added every day, and that is, from a business point of view, that's really, so really exciting, and sort of we have a lot of volume and a lot of scale, so we see a lot of these issues and we see a lot of different types of projects on the platform.
Yeah.
But it also speaks to the fact that there's a lot of issues. There's a lot of issues in society, and we sort of position ourselves as a platform to enable those people to raise funds to make the changes that they want to see.
And like our whole partnership is about funding positivity, which kind of combines your brand with like Smiley movement. What does that mean to you when, like, you say funding positivity? So
when we talk about statistics, I think I just mentioned, 200 to 300 projects add to the platform every day.
Yeah.
What they actually are is, when you start to look at them, 200 to 300 stories, right? They're stories that can sometimes just make you cry. They can make you really angry. They can make you laugh, and they can make you feel really, really proud, and they stir all sorts of emotions within yourself. And what our job to do there is sort of help those projects and find the things, whether they're sad stories, help them do the things they're trying to do, fund the outcome that they want, which by and large is always a positive outcome, a positive end or a positive outcome to something which is quite often quite desperate, quite sad. And I think that's where our sort of funding positivity sort of approach and stance comes from.
Yeah, as someone that works more on like the platform side, do you find yourself getting attached to these stories and these campaigns that start off, you see them grow from like really small, like maybe 100 people to like thousands or even millions of people backing this campaign?
I do, and I feel immensely proud. Not that you asked me that. I feel immensely proud when I go and I walk somewhere. So, for instance, I was just been in Brighton.
Yeah.
I walked out of Brighton Station and I went underneath the tunnel, and right there, the first business I saw is the Brighton. I think it's the Toy Museum.
Yes.
And they crowdfunded with us, and I recognised the woman who was behind the counter, the winner from her crowdfunding video, and I gave her a wave. I didn't have time to go in, and I was on a call, but I gave her a wave, and I thought that's amazing. It's like these are things that are all over our community. So people have used Crowdfunder to really maintain and keep and save and start the things that mean so much to so many people.
And it's quite good that you can see like the campaigns like physically in your community. I feel like sometimes, a lot of the times, campaigns are like the backbone. They support and they live on sometimes beyond like their initial purpose.
So I think to that point about living on, a crowdfund campaign really is more than money. Right?
Yeah.
So what it does is it aggregates your support. It gets everyone behind a cause, but it's also validating your idea. It's like, you're not going to give my idea some money unless you think it's got value. Whether that's value to somebody else, a recipient, someone who's going to benefit from the mental health cafe that you're trying to set up, or whether it's like something that actually you're going to benefit from because you're going to get tickets to a gig or whatever it might be, right?
Yeah.
It's about the validation of the idea. And that's why when you crowdfund anything from a business to a community non-profit, they tend to have more of a fighting chance of being sustainable and sustaining themselves because they've, by nature of how they've arrived, they've got that support. So you think of crowdfunding as building in your customers, your advocates, and the people who want to support and want the thing that you care about aligned with and actually to happen.
And it seems that like a lot of the campaigns have like a lot of like heartfelt feelings to beneath it. But are there some that are just like a bit silly, but everyone gets behind?
Yeah, I was thinking about one of these on the way here, and there was one that was just so sort of funny, which was Jeremy Corbyn's bike was stolen. This was years ago. Jeremy Corbyn's bike was stolen, and someone started a crowdfund campaign to buy him a new bike.
Did he get a new bike?
He got a new bike.
Great.
And it went viral. So it started with his new bike was £500 or something like that, and it smashed through the target. At which point the project owner updated said, "We're going to buy Jeremy a bike, but actually everything else that we raise is going to go to this charity."
Oh, great.
And it was just like an amazing positive thing, and everyone gets on board with those things. You know when you see those things happen on the internet.
100%.
Get a bit of virality and like everyone's behind it. We have those moments on Crowdfunder.
Yeah.
It can be really, really exciting.
Are there any campaigns that like hit you emotionally? Whether
The endless campaigns hit me emotionally. There's so many. There's some really fun stuff that happens on the platform. I remember one where there was this young lady from wherever it is that Stormzy comes from, wherever he lives. I think South Norwood, right?
Yeah.
And there was a young lady who was crowdfunding. She got into MIT and she was crowdfunding to try and get the fees, to raise the fees to go, because she couldn't get a grant for it. Someone in that same community tweeted Stormzy saying, "This person from our neighbourhood is trying to get to MIT. I'll buy you a Nando's if you help." And he tweeted back, "You owe me a Nando's," and he dropped something like $7 or $8 grand on the project and just funded it. It's like those sort of moments were just like, you could almost miss them. They're like that was so there was no reason why we would have been looking at that project other than obviously the social media thing. Suddenly going, "Oh, we've got a whole load of like sort of social media mentions," and it's like, "Oh, it's come from Stormzy." Yeah, so and it's those sorts of things happen. So there's those amazing like magical things, and then one of the projects that I always go back to when people ask me about amazing projects, and it always goes back to amazing humans. I think is a lady who had started. She basically started nursery care in a care home. So something like 65-70% of people in care homes never get a visitor. Right? That's no one coming to visit them other than the amazing staff who are working there, but no family, no friends, no one coming to visit them. So there's a real sort of problem with loneliness, which obviously creates significant mental health issues, and this is in our elderly, right? So this lady started this program partly because she didn't want to return back to the city post maternity leave where she was working previously. She started this business, which was a charity, which was essentially bringing children, I think first of all her children, into care homes, and she set up a whole nursery system. So you suddenly have this moment where you've got these old people in care homes with kids running around them, singing them nursery rhymes, playing music, and like really changing the whole atmosphere. And they did research around, something like 95% of the people who are involved in it have just positively changed their sort of mindset, and their mental health is improving. And so people like who do things like that are just amazing, and we have people like that on the platform all the time. So we've had some amazing ones. So there's an amazing stable. It's called the Stables. And it's one of our most fantastic sort of I think it raised £1.3 million. It's run by this incredible woman called Natalie, and she runs a stable which was in South London, and this stables was under threat. But the thing about the stables was it serves disadvantaged children, disabled people, people with sort of learning difficulties that were really reliant on this stable as one of their only kind of like, outlets and leisure times and enjoyable moments and therapeutic moments in the week. It came under threat. The landlord was going to sell the building. She started a crowdfunder with a target of £1.2 million on it, which was really daunting.
Yeah.
We were like, this isn't going to happen. She started raising some money. We got in touch with her. We offered her some support, and she sort of said, "I've got some stuff coming. I've got some support." and then the next time we saw it, it was on Breakfast TV with Rob Brydon, and suddenly the curve just started to tick up, and they raised their 1.2 million, bought the stable. It was just amazing. So that wasn't Rob Brydon necessarily supporting it in terms of financing. That was Rob Brydon using his platform, his audience, his fame to help raise the profile of that project.
Yeah.
So we get onto that.
It seems like with like the age of social media, you see it, like people feel like they need to go viral or get that like social media attention to help their campaign. Do you feel like that's like the 100% the secret ingredient, or do you feel like it's just mobilising the community?
It's actually not the 100% at all. And what's really interesting is I think a lot of people think it's about that. So we can have support coming out from a huge sort of account with lots and lots of followers. It's about authenticity. So you can have a celebrity just tweeting, sharing, whatever it might be, something out. If it's not actually relevant, connected, and is done with authenticity, it'll do nothing.
So what's the campaign that was trending on socials?
There's a brilliant, it's a tiny little pub in a tiny little village, which I live in Dorset, and it's on the South Dorset coast. This tiny little village called Langdon Herring, right? I've never been there. It's about 6 miles from me. And there's a pub there called the Elm Tree, and that pub has been there forever, and it's been a really, really important part of this tiny little village on the coast. There's nothing else in the village. And I think the owner of the pub put it up for sale, was getting out of the business, and it was going to close. In fact, I think it did actually close. And the community were sort of bereft by the loss of this hub in their community. So they came together and they set up a crowdfund campaign to buy back the pub, and the community to own it. And they needed to raise a significant sum of money.
Yeah.
And it's a little Dorset little village with quite an old population. So it's a small population, but it's quite old. But actually what happened with the marketing side of it is I think it was one of their daughters turned up and said, we need to make a TikTok video. And they made this TikTok video, which is absolutely hilarious. And it went viral. And it went, it got significant views, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of views. And what it did was it just broadcast this tiny little village, the plight of trying to buy the pub, and it broadcast it to the world. And actually what you ended up with was thousands of pledges and donations coming from the US. So it was like so abstract. And obviously the people just got so involved in this story of a place they're never going to go to help this little community buy its pub. Because of the storytelling and the authenticity and the humour of the storytelling. So that's a brilliant campaign, and they raised the funds and they now own the pub, and I still haven't been to visit it.
What would you advise to people that want to start their own crowdfunder? They see this episode and they're like, oh, I have an idea, I have something I'm really passionate about. What's the number one thing you would say, this is what you need to do?
I think have the confidence to start it. Start to tell your story. Start to write it down. So you can go on to Crowdfunder and you can just start a project. You're under no obligation, doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah.
You're under no obligation to go and actually make it live. You can just start to create it. You learn so many things when you crowdfund. So, if this is your first idea and you might think it's completely mad, well, you've got to try and communicate it. So you've got to turn the camera on yourself and say some words about it.
Yeah.
You've got to write a script, teaching you all that. You've then got to work out, how do I actually convince you to part with some money to support my idea, right? That's an art. That's something you'll learn. So it's just making a start. Do it in layers. Don't just rush it. The best projects that we see happen are ones that are a bit more considered. Of course we get emergency ones that, very, very, this is what's happened, we need help.
Yeah.
But the ones that I think are probably more relevant to this community and funding positivity, the ones that are more considered, I've got an idea, we're not sitting there judging that idea. That's what you're taking to the crowd. And we see all sorts of weird and certainly wonderful stuff crowdfund. Sometimes we're surprised. Sometimes we're like, oh, well, obviously it means something to those 5,000 people. There's probably a bit of a misconception that you put your idea up and there's a crowd of people wanting to put money on it. That's not the way it works. You have to start it. You have to get the people who trust and care about you to invest in you first. You have to get, then the next layer and then the next layer. It does gain a bit of a life of its own. it gains momentum. But it's sort of, it kind of comes from you to start off with. But there's lots of guides and lots of, how-tos, and we've got a lot of support for people who are learning it. We've got lots of expert crowdfunders who also share their knowledge with other projects.
And what role does Crowdfunder play in amplifying the stories and the campaigns on their platform?
So amazing partnerships like this.
Yeah.
We obviously have our own social media. We get a lot of traffic on the site.
Yeah.
And there's various things that happen. So and email as well. So we will support projects that are trending and starting to fund. That kind of happens automatically. So when your project gains traction, it will automatically appear on the homepage. It will automatically appear in different areas where there's lots of traffic. So you get traction off that. We do curate and pick stories. We also have stories that are aligning with some of the campaigns that we're running. So we have thematic campaigns. So we've just been doing a whole lot of stuff in the arts. So lots of filmmakers, lots of creative projects. We'll be doing sports projects.
So I've been dying since this conversation started to ask, what came first, Crowdfunder or crowdfunding?
Well, I'll be lying if I said it was Crowdfunder. Crowdfunding. I think crowdfunding historically goes way back.
Right.
The idea, the concept of people coming together to pay for something. I think that was called national subscription or something like that, and it was quite often used for, commemorative stuff within the arts. A lot of the I think the sort of statues and such like that you see around London might be funded through public subscription.
Yeah.
So I think that was the old-fashioned crowdfunding.
Yeah.
We've modernised it quite a bit. So we are not the only fundraising platform, but I think what Crowdfunder does quite uniquely is we talk about it being more than just fundraising by bringing in also partnerships. So we have at any given time about 15 to 20 million pounds of other partner money on the platform. And we perform almost like a bit of a dating service. So out of those 200 to 300 projects that are being added, all those projects have been profiled for matches against their criteria. So something like Aviva have £1 million that they want to support community projects that are doing this type of activity. And we have a partnership with British Airways who will be doing this sort of activity. And we try and matchmake the two. So if you're coming on the platform to raise £10,000 for your project, your creative project, that might be something that one of our partners will want to help you fundraise for, right? That means that your £10,000 target suddenly reduces to £5,000 because for every £10 you get off the crowd, one of our partners is going to match that.
Yeah.
And that's incredibly powerful. And that's an incredible way to validate your idea even further. And it's an incredible way to raise more money than you actually might have set out to raise.
You said that you monitor the trends. What are some of the trends in crowdfunding? What kind of campaigns are people more doing at the moment?
So at the moment we've got a lot of campaigns in the arts space. Arts is really, really struggling for funding. I think as everyone knows, there's a real push on a lot of pressure on traditional grants. We're seeing a lot of creative projects, a lot of documentary filmmaking. I think there's an interesting thing which is kind of happening where, activism is being pushed a little bit harder. It's a bit harder to get out on the streets and get your activism going, activism active. And documentary filmmaking is one very, very powerful way of doing that. Yeah. And there's a bit of a change in the shift going on in the traditional I suppose commissioning world. So more and more filmmakers are turning to crowdfunding to get their films made. And again, that's directly going to the person who wants to see that story told.
So our audience, it's a lot of changemakers, charities, people active in their community. What would be your advice to get them started on that journey?
I think the first step is to obviously, let's say this, visit the website, see what people are doing, see what you might want to get involved in, what you might want to support, and you can search for and you can find projects that align with themes. So whether it's something in the arts or whether it's something in mental health, you can find projects and causes that are working in that space. You can also search by location so you can see what's going on around you. So I think that's it's a really great place to be inspired and kind of go, okay, my idea isn't so mad after all. My idea is a bit like that and a bit like that, and I can make it happen. It's about you can build that confidence in yourself that you can do it. And that's the thing. I think again, when we talk to a lot of project owners, the outcome is like, I did it, and part of me was like, I didn't think I was going to do it.
Yeah.
And they get to a point where they see that validation, and being validated by your community is an incredibly powerful and potent thing.
Yeah.
in how it prepares you for the next step and the next thing, you know, that you want to do, where you want to take your idea. We tell the stories of project owners. We've got a lot of content, stories and films and podcasts of those project owners telling us how they did it. That all unpacks into great learning and great guides, but it also sort of really demonstrates time and time again that, you know, where projects set out thinking, I'm not going to do this, or this is impossible, that actually they did it, and it was possible all along.
Do other projects like partner with other projects on the platform and like work together?
So brilliantly, I think I mentioned Natalie from the Stables.
Yeah.
So Natalie, we did a podcast with Natalie, and she unpacked the whole story, how she did it from everything. It was like a blueprint of how to raise £1.2 million for your stable, and every single time we get a stable, because they are a thing and they are a type of charity and a type of activity that struggles, you know, it's their rising costs and lots of stuff. So whenever we get one of those on the platform, Natalie, sometimes I've messaged Natalie going, "Hey Natalie," and she's going, "I've already spoken to them." So she's always helping.
So maybe Crowdfunder does like a little bit of peer mentorship on the side.
Absolutely. We run webinars, and we bring, you know, one of the most powerful things in one of our webinars is we will bring a project owner, because it's like, you know, we're kind of like, we can sit and tell you how great it is, but actually it's more important that this person who did it tells you.
I think that like really segues well into like our first story that we're going to cover with Boxing for Better. Started off with a one man in Manchester who, you know, gave free boxing classes to kids and people with disabilities and previously incarcerated individuals during the pandemic, and he now wants to make his idea much bigger and like, you know, incorporate his community, and hopefully, you know, we'll see him delivering webinars about his...
Hopefully. And what I know about that project is it sounds like an amazing project. It's right in the heart of how Crowdfunder works, and almost like the kind of project that we set Crowdfunder up for.
Yeah.
So, you know, we know that sport in the community is incredibly powerful. We know that, you know, it reduces crime, antisocial behaviour, helps mental health, you know, and it gives people purpose, and that's what I think his project is. The heart of his project is around changing the outcomes and the opportunities in his immediate community.